All right, everybody, welcome back to Off the Grid on the Record. Today, we've got Jeremy Nielsen with us, founder of Sally.co, and he's the founder of the all-in-one platform making special purpose vehicles, or SPVs, simple, clean, and headache-free. So for anyone that doesn't know, we'll get into that in a second. But just for some context, Jeremy's done over 9,000 SPVs and has taken all that experience just to build a platform that keeps everything in one place. So without the juggling spreadsheets, the off-platform tasks, and to be honest, the endless emails, which, I don't think most of us love. But Jeremy, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time, and I'm excited to get into this. How you doing today?
Great. Thanks, Yerrick. I'm excited to talk about Sally and all things SPVs.
Amazing. And Sally is the platform name, just for anyone confused out there. But before we dive into that, can you explain to everybody what an SPV actually is?
Sure. SPV is a simple, structured vehicle used by everybody out there that is trying to invest into private assets. It's basically a Delaware LLC or LP entity that you use to aggregate investors to pool capital in order to invest into either a venture fund, a startup, a secondary real estate project. And they say special purpose vehicle because you've set up this vehicle, this Delaware LLC, for a special purpose. The special purpose is to do this investment. So they're pretty simple, they're pretty kind of quiet, but there is a lot of kind of moving parts when you get into that world of collecting money, aggregating funds, signing documents, and investing into private assets. And so that's what I do, is try to make that as simple and smooth as possible.
Fair enough. And because that's leading into the next thing, right? I mean, Sally.co, it's kind of does exactly that. Can you share a little bit about just your background and then how you got into the space, in
Yeah.
general?
My background has kind of two key experiences that are very formative to this whole thing. One is I went to law school. So I'm a lawyer, and SPVs are very legal. The other thing is I was hired as I kind of came out of MBA school. I'd gone to law school already to launch and run the Utah Fund of Funds. This was a state of Utah fund of funds program. It had economic development aspects to it. And so the point of that is I learned the business. I started to understand private asset investing, fund structures, investments, all that stuff. And from the Utah Fund of Funds, I was hired by AngelList to launch the affordable, fast moving SPV or structured vehicle product. And my co founder and I kind of created this market, created this product, and we had ultimately provided the services to all the major platforms out there, all the major players. And that's where the 9,000 number comes from, is we did 9,000 SPVs for all of these thousands and thousands of clients that we did. And all of that, for the most part, was pretty manual. When we very first SPV, very manual. That is phone calls, signing documents, no technology. We weren't even using DocuSign at that point. I mean, DocuSign was there, but it wasn't being used for the most part. I still remember I would walk into the bank to open the bank account. We would get checks mailed to the office, and then I would walk those to the bank. I mean, so just like everything manual. We then built a little bit of tech and a little more tech and a little more and a little more, and trying to get to that kind of Goldilocks zone, which is very difficult while you're running a professional services firm. Ultimately, stepped away from that business and really focused in on building that software that captures all of those manual and moving parts that I experienced for many years and over 9,000 SPVs.
That's huge. I mean, you kind of were about to get into that area, but what was that light bulb moment where you realized that, the SPV process could be done just so much better?
Really was a gradual moment, if you will, when and technology would evolve and then help with another light bulb moment. So it wasn't like just one day where you're like, what are we doing here? Like, software could solve all of this. So our very first approach was a Salesforce little build, and it was just to do with document signing. So the document signing was particularly painful where individuals would fill it out wrong. They would get confused. And then when you don't have any technology, this is paper and you're calling them and maybe you're writing it in for them or you're sending it back and forth. And then so DocuSign started to come onto the scene. I mean, it was there, but just people starting to use it for this use case. And then people would continue to mess it up. DocuSign's early features are not what they are today. And so what would happen would be you would fill out the form and people would just they would just go right to the bottom and sign. And you'd be like, no, no, no. You have to go through the document and you have to fill out
Hmm.
these fields. And you really couldn't make them required, or there wasn't these features where you could like pick one of many or pick two of a few or must pick this one or this one's optional. Like that stuff wasn't
Hmm.
there on day one. And so people would just like mess it up even more. And then so you're like, hey, this is not right. And after
Hmm.
two or three times, they were throwing their arms in the air. They're like, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is terrible. I mean, so we built that very first little technology was something on top of Salesforce where we could collect some information and populate the documents.
Hmm.
From there, then it was like, onboarding some profile information. From there, communicating a little bit more about money movement. So just you kind of just layering on these little things that you're trying to add and wondering if you could build something. We ultimately tried to build a more comprehensive platform instead of these little kind of rinky-dink tools, if you will. And with that was great, but there were so many edge cases that you would have with an SPV, so many things that were not captured in that software. It
Hmm.
ultimately resulted in a Frankenstein of a process, a Frankenstein of a deal where you've got some investors on platform, you've got some off platform. So what that results in, and now you've got three things going on. You've got platform work, you have off platform work, and then you've got like a master,
Hmm.
meaning what's the source of all truth? Because I've got some over here and some over here, and I need to have everybody in one place. So now you've got three things going on instead of one or two. And so you just kind of try to build it as you go. And and with the platform that we started to build, the architecture wasn't correct. The system was pretty brittle. And so you tried to like, oh, let's add this feature. Or, oh, this would be great. And then the whole thing would kind of crumble on you. And
Hmm.
so now you got to start that all over again. So SPVs have never been, until today, are really something where you could really get your arms around all of it. And you've seen a lot of people out there work on, well, I'll just be really good at document signing, which is great. Or I'm going to be really good at reporting at post close, which is great. But ultimately, that just means you've got multiple platforms, on platform, off platform, master spreadsheets. And so Sally is that all features, all functions, that one place for all truth platform that is only possible after doing thousands of SPVs because you don't
Hmm.
know those edge cases, you don't know those investor types, you don't know those investment types or investor and investment types that are out there in order to get that list. Like, okay, I'm going to need
Hmm.
all of these features and functions, or I'm going to be off platform, on platform, and
Exactly.
building a mess.
So before we get into like the actual hugely technical things, how does Sally Co actually work in practice for a customer? Like, what are they seeing from there and from signing up to running their first SPV?
Yeah. So Sally has two really core flows. One is the organizer or GP or syndicator, and the other one is the investor. The features that are really robust and kind of really deep, really on that organizer GP side of where you're managing all of these moving parts. But they also kind of cross over onto that investor side because the whole point of doing an SPV is you're going to invite investors, they're going to come in and invest. So an investor's flow is pretty simple. And the understanding is that you need to have a profile on the system. This profile is very detailed, if you will, as to who you are. And we need this information to do a KYC AML background check, and we need it to populate the SPV documents. And so we walk each investor through the flow of pick the type of investor that you are. And when I say type, that means, are you investing as an individual, just yourself with your social security number? Or are you investing from an entity like an LLC, E Corp, something like that? Are you investing from a trust? Are you investing a joint tenancy with a spouse, right? Like, how are you approaching this? So as you pick one of those, then all the questions kind of different and the fields differ. And then you follow like who you are and what's your name and what's your social and what's your address. And then there's like citizenship. Are you US? If not, that's fine. Let's see a passport. You just fill out all the stuff. And then you have
Hmm.
to be accredited. These are Reg D transactions. And so you got to be accredited. And so then there's questions about accreditation. And so there's kind of an investor type. And then there's also citizenship, kind of US versus non US tends to kind of be how it goes in the kind of KYC AML and investment. Because it's a US structure, because it's a US Delaware structure, that's why it's US versus non US. And so that's kind of the flow as you get in. Everyone, for the most part, knows the answers to the questions, names, addresses, phone numbers, socials, or EIN numbers, and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So it's pretty smooth flow. From there, they then will then invest. So then it's how much do you want to put in? And then behind the scenes, Sally's taking all that information from that profile and it's populating the documents, putting the name where it goes, putting that social where it goes, or putting that passport number where it goes, just filling out the documents for them. And then they sign the documents and then they need to send in their money. So investors need to do three things to invest. They need to clear KYC AML when that requires the profile. They need to sign the documents. That requires the profile. And then they need to send in their money. And we just give them the options. Do you want a wire? Here are the wire instructions. Do you want ACH? Fill out this form on the system and we can pull the funds. So
Hmm.
that's pretty basic in that you just need to fill out the profile. You need to sign the documents. You need to send in the money. Organizers are kind of in the background after they've invited them, watching that happen and watching people come into the system, watching them clear KYCML or send in their funds. The system's automated as it's doing this stuff behind the scenes. And so that's the main flow. The organizer then has tasks as the money starts to flow in. They may have other tasks, but ultimately they start having more tasks when they want to close on the money, security filings, taxes, capital account statements, and all this stuff. And Sally again is automating or helping tremendously in all of those tasks as well.
Fair enough. And then who tends to get the most value from Sally right now? Like, who's the ICP? Is it, more seasoned fund managers, or is it just kind of people setting up their very first SPV?
Yeah, it's kind of across the board. It's if you're a newbie is what I call people that have never done an SPV before. They're just getting started. What's great about starting on Sally with your first SPV is that you're not needing to migrate later. You're not needing to have different experiences, kind of that fractional platform experience. You're not being told that you have to limit your approaches or feature sets because you're on a different platform. And so that is nice. The other real value add is those that are doing scale scale SPVs, like they're doing a lot of SPVs because the more off platform, the more edge cases, the more extra stuff that you have, it just compounds. Even though it's like, oh, I'll just do it on this first one. And then it's like on your 15th, you're still doing it. And now things are piling up and you've got multiple places to go and look for things. Things are getting lost and confusing. And another big edge case or big value or selling point is Sally is white labeled. So everybody has their own system. It's not branded Sally. You could use Sally and your investors and everyone would never know that you're using Sally. It doesn't even have that little brought to you by or powered by or anything like that. So it's your very own system that allows you to run deals the way you want to with your own customization, your own uniqueness, your own cadence, because Sally has that capability and that architectural structure.
Fair enough. And I mean, in terms of marketing growth, right? I'm sure that's huge. I mean, the response to Sally is, I'd say, from what we talked about, is still in the early stages. But what's been your most effective way of explaining its value so far? Because, not everyone always has the time to sit and listen to a podcast like this. How do you say it in a sentence, two sentences? Call it under a minute, right?
Yeah. Um, it's a great question. I think Sally's best selling point is its ability to have kind of an endless number of features. Everybody that's done SPVs is frustrated because they're stopped with collecting individuals' retirement funds, frustrated because they have to go off platform for some certain things, frustrated because they don't control the close of the SPV, frustrated because bugs or weirdness with the system. I just talked to an individual today who uses a group that just specializes in fund signings. It's all they do is they've got a software to help people sign fund documents. And we just talked about the differences between the system that he's using versus what Sally has and the system that he's using. He said, it still is like DocuSign where you're taking the individuals through the entire document and like dropping them like, here's a field. And maybe it's still kind of being auto populated. It's dropping them to every single field all the way through. For some, you may say that's exactly what I want. I want them to see it. That's fine. But it's been my experience that that just confuses people. It's like, am I supposed to read this? Is that right? I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Do I need to click a certain button? And so Sally is like, just give us all this detail, which you have to do anyways. We'll just put it in the document for you. So, and she's got the uniqueness and the breadth of the features is really what is the selling point of Sally.
And it is a great selling point. I do like it. Even when we talked, last week, or I think earlier this week, we really figured out a couple of the, most amazing value propositions with it. And, that having that said, how are you getting that in front of people and, really, I want to say marketing all of this because it's obviously, like we just said in the last segment, that it's difficult to put all this value into you know, such a tight little ball and just throw it at people and hope that they understand what it is. So what's the go-to market and what's the marketing approach for this?
Yeah, the best marketing approach has been with SPVs and will be for Sally is kind of the flywheel effect, the referral, if you will, of what are you using? Garrick. Oh, I'm using Sally. Oh, I haven't heard about that, or I've heard about them, but why do you like them? That really is going to be the number one. I think that's always is. But when it comes to professional services like this, and you're like collecting people's money and you're doing security filings, there's a little bit of extra edge of concern or want to have a little extra safety or a little more of a referral, if you will. And so the most important thing I can do is just make my current customers happy. And as they talk to people, they will talk about Sally. The other thing is that everyone kind of cross pollinates their deals, meaning, if you're doing deals and I'm doing deals, we share our deals with each other. Sometimes we invest into each other's deals. And if you're using Sally and I'm not, I end up on the platform. I end up using it. I end up, starting to ask questions. And so there's a bit of a flywheel or a network effect to these types of products. So I'm using all the usual marketing right now of social media and email. I've got my All Things SPV YouTube channel, podcasts and stuff like that. So it'll kind of be a slow burn at first, and then as people really get to understand it, and there's those referenceable clients, and that flywheel really gets going, that network effect will get going. It'll accelerate after that.
Fair enough. And I think you're in a position where, scalability is definitely in question, right? I mean, I'm not sure how much of the market that Sally is using in terms of, handling SPVs, but was there ever a question or is there an idea of, scaling it up to having a larger chunk of market value? And if so, what's the plan for that?
Yeah, so Sally's built for scale. In my prior life, doing things manually with weak or kind of fractional, incomplete technology, scaling really hurts. You're creating all these extra processes, you're just throwing humans at it. You're kind of desperate for the tech team to fix this, and it's just really chaotic. One of the things I made sure with Sally was I didn't go out to market, if you will, until I had a really solid base where features can be created very quickly and easily, that the architecture and the structure was in place and working, and that I had a strong set of features and functions that allow Sally to grow and scale. It's prepared and ready for anybody to come on and do as many deals as they want. It's meant to be helping. It's meant to help its users move quickly as well, where you don't have to do all this little extra work. And I'll just say that I run some SPVs on there myself, and I'm actually shocked as I sit there. I just kind of watch the software. I don't expect other users to do that, but it kind of as a proud papa, if you will, I just sit there and stare at me like it's working, and I don't have anything to do. It's just doing it for me. It's, running this and doing that and kicking off emails and letting people know. And I don't have anything to do, which is like amazing. Allows me to spend my time on doing other things. And so there's kind of an endless opportunity there. And it needs more features. It'll have more features. And what's great and what I'm really comfortable about, and what I'm really excited about, is the ability to add those features quickly. This comes from
Hmm.
my prior life with a prior experience where features just couldn't get built. Like it just couldn't happen. It would just be really brittle. It would break, so you'd add something, and what other things broke, and it just wasn't a system that you could really add features. And Sally is an API based system and really allows us to do whatever we want to add. We days, couple
Hmm.
weeks, major features, or like 2 weeks, 3 weeks builds. Um, Before it'd be a 6 month build, and even then it might not even be that good and break. And so,
Hmm.
it's just very exciting for the opportunity.
Well, you're hinting at us here. Is there any big features or expansions you can, I guess, give us like a little peek under the skirt for that's happening in the near future?
Big one that I really want, and I'm been kind of flirting with and messing around with a lot, is taxes. Taxes is a very big part of private asset investing. You need to report. Taxes tend to be and have been a manual service or process, and pretty excited about really working in trying to build in automation there, trying to see how far we can stretch that. I'm really excited about AI when it comes to tax and some reporting, because I have a lot of scars from doing taxes for these SPVs, and being able to feed a model and build the technology around that would be just earth shattering for this space, and starting to see a path there where we can start to see that inside the system.
Makes sense. And then, I mean, looking at it now, if adoption, like you're saying, is kind of at a slower burn right now, what's the tipping point that you're aiming for
Tipping point, what do you mean?
in terms of like when it's like going to explode, when you're ready for it to be, mass adopted,
Yeah.
anything along those lines?
I would say when, when you're closing, I don't know, 5 or 6 a month on the platform, is tends to be kind of a point where now you've got, dozens of clients. You have thousands, hundreds or thousands of investors going through it, and, the exposure is kind of at that tipping point. So 5, 6 deals a month is where you start to see that it starts to tick up on the flywheel. You can start to see that flywheel starting to move on its own.
And then now, like taking a huge step back, where do you see Sally in the next, 3 to even 5 years?
Yeah. 3 years, I think, will be part of that flywheel, the network effect, and, after about 3 years, you'll really see it just humming along and being the amazing platform that we envisioned it to be for a large number of clients and customers. 5 years, you'll start to see some amazing features that around analytics, around reporting, around automated tax, just being able to just add all of that extra layer of features that take you into from from just doing SPVs to a lot more. One of them is venture funds. So next year we'll work on and release the first phase of using the platform to run venture funds. And what I mean by that is not the financials and the tax, but the fundraise. So you go out and you fundraise for a venture fund. It's a little bit different than an SPV. The unique thing is that everything's the same except for maybe the order in which they come or how you use them, meaning everyone needs to have a profile and sign documents. Everyone needs to have a background check. Everyone needs to send in money. The SPVs, you
Hmm.
send it in immediately. With venture funds, they come with capital calls. You have closes with SPVs, you have closes with venture fund. So what we need to do is kind of reorder some things and slide in a couple features, and then venture funds can use the platform to raise their venture fund. And then when they do SPVs alongside that fund, they've got that one platform for everybody to remain in, stay in. And again, it's kind of that, I don't want to have these multiple systems. I don't want to have these extra spreadsheets. And it gives them that chance to just have that one.
Hmm. That makes sense. I love it. And then just like last one before we wrap everything up, if you could go to the start of all this, before this was, started and it was just an idea, what's one thing you would do differently in that entire, couple year process?
What would I do different? I definitely think I would perhaps build features at a different order. You kind of think, well, this is the most important feature. Everyone's going to love this one or whatever, and they don't, or it didn't turn out to be that important, or you need to do something else before. So you're always kind of second guessing that roadmap that you played out, the priority list that you did. Maybe spending too much too early, like, "Oh, we need to have this integration today," and you pay a lot for it, and then you don't use it for a year or something. All those little kind of second guessings and learnings that you have. But for the most part, because I had so much experience with SPVs, and this was my fifth iteration of SPV software. I had a pretty good roadmap, pretty good outline, if you will, as to where this thing needed to go. It'd almost be easier to talk about the millions of mistakes I made on iteration 1 through 4, far more interesting than this one, since I have those scars already.
Of course. I mean, this, okay. And Jeremy, this has been awesome. I'm pretty excited about this because I think from what I've heard, because before even speaking with you, I've heard a lot of problems that, kind of surround the area, and not even did a solution to this kind of come to mind. So when I spoke with you and, we connected, it was huge for me. So, I mean, for anyone listening who's either running SPVs or thinking about, starting one, where's the best place for them to find you and learn more about Sally?
Yeah, so Sally.co, pretty simple. A lot of people ask me about the name of Sally. Why'd you name it Sally? It's another name for venture. So there's a military phrase called Sally Forth, means to go out and do something difficult, to venture forth, and love that imagery. And I could get the name with a Sally.co, and so Sally.co. Fill out the form. Love to chat with you. Show you the system.
Amazing. And so, from everybody listening, that's it for today for Off the Grid on the record. If you got value from this, please share it with someone who's deep in the investment world. They might thank you later. So, you guys can catch all past episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Honestly, wherever you get your podcasts, it'll be there. And Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Eric. Enjoyed it.
Amazing. And everyone, take care, and we'll see you next time.